Hello there, welcome to UPfront with me, Blessed Sogah. He's delighted returning to a place he would like to call home. After nearly 20 years of being away, Dr. Christian Rourke is beginning the next chapter of his diplomatic career as British High Commissioner to the Republic of Ghana. Although the UK and Ghana's relations remain firm, the shifting sands of geopolitics and some developments in the West African sub-region, including the rising cases of extremism, is giving cause for worry and concern. So I went to meet him up for his very first interview since returning to the Republic of Ghana, and we had a conversation on a wide range of issues. I started by asking Dr. Rourke what his take was after returning 20 years to a country that is known as the beacon of democracy. Dr. Christian Rourke, thank you for talking to Joy News. The last time I believe you were in Accra, you had the harbour. How does it feel now, coming back 20 years on?
Thank you, Blessed. And yeah, it's good to be back. As you mentioned, I lived in Accra before. I did hear the words Akwaba, although I also heard the same words in Ga. I know that they're
Obake.
Obake, exactly. So important to remember both. And it's exciting. For me, it's a happy moment to be back here. I've been hoping for the opportunity to come back to Accra, and now it finally happened.
Great, and we're happy to have you here in Accra. How does it feel like coming back? And for the purposes of those who may not necessarily remember the time when you were back here in Ghana, what brought you to Accra the first time?
Yeah, so I was here for 3.5 years, between 2006 and 2009, also for the British government, and it was a very eventful period, and I have lots of memories from that time. It was a period of a lot of change, and with hindsight now, quite a lot of historic moments. The 2008 election monitor in Western region and seeing Ghanaians going to the ballot box was an unforgettable memory. Also, the Africa Cup of Nations took place here, and I saw a country unbelievably excited about football and about the Black Stars, and going to the national stadium and cheering on the team was another memory. The new Ghana CD was introduced, and I can still remember the song, but the value is the same, exactly. Oil was discovered. So it felt like I was here at a time when a lot of things were happening, and in addition to that, I felt a real connection with Ghanaian culture, the warmth of the people. And then on your question in terms of what does it feel like being back after so many years, everybody tells me it has changed completely, but I don't really see it that way. All the things that I remember fondly are still there. People are still as friendly as they were before. The food is still as good as it was before, and the vibrancy of the city, and I had the opportunity to travel quite a bit out of Accra in the last couple of weeks as well. It's all still there. What has changed is some of the things that have been a focus for many years. So when I was here before, I was focusing on poverty reduction, international development agendas, and Ghana has made a lot of progress on education, on health over that time. And of course, when you drive around Accra, you see lots of new infrastructure and buildings. So it looks a bit different. There has been quite a bit of progress, but all the things that made it a special place are still there.
You've been up to a lot already. I see some of the articles online, sharing your reflection and your expectation going into your tour of duty. And you were just pointing out rightly what hasn't changed much about the country. I was just quoting portions of what you put up. You said, what's not changed much is the, quote, generosity, optimism, and democratic spirit of the Ghanaian.
Yeah.
But some say it's the same now, is it?
So on the issues around the warm welcome and the early engagements I've had, it does feel like Ghana is still a very welcoming country, amazing hospitality, and a real excitement about showing Ghanaian culture and making people connect with it. And likewise, I think the fact that when you look at other countries, when you look at the wider region, certain things that maybe people took for granted around security that have been questioned have been maintained in Ghana. And so to me, it feels like there's progress. It feels like some of the things that were maybe fragile have consolidated, including, you mentioned the democratic spirit. And I mentioned being here for the 2008 election. There have been several elections since then. We've seen several times when power changed between the two parties, and where people were nervous about, will the elections be free and fair? Will there be violence? And there was always a spotlight, and sometimes things happened, but they were of a scale that didn't raise questions over the whole election or the security of citizens and so on. So I think I am optimistic, and I have seen many things that could have gone differently, being protected and maintained.
Do you feel we should continue basking in the glory of being, the beacon of democracy in the SAP region? And what do you think has kept us going on as a country in terms of our democratic principle?
Yeah. So that term I've heard a lot, beacon of democracy. And as I just mentioned, it's a well-earned title. But when you look around the world, and it's not just about the sub-region, democracy has been under threat all around the world in many different countries. We're seeing that some countries that were democratic have now seen coups d'etats, have seen an imposition of authoritarianism. But also we've seen in countries that are still democratic, the rights have been eroded. So when you look at the figures, it's actually quite striking, the share of the global population that is reducing effectively in terms of enjoying democratic rights and values. So I don't think it's something that should be taken for granted. I think Ghana deserves huge credit for what has been achieved. But democracy is something that needs to be nurtured. It needs to modernize with the aspirations of the people. So the constitutional review that's underway, I don't know where it's going to go. It's uncharted territory to some extent, but that's one of the ways to say, is democracy in Ghana still in line with the aspirations of the population today, or do there need to be changes? So yes, it's impressive in terms of where Ghana is at and where it has been, but it's also important to not to rest on those laurels and to see what more can be done.
Developments within the SAP region is giving us reason to reflect, and much more importantly, as you alluded to, the issue about constitutional review, which is underway. Some say it's coming at a very opportune time when many have expressed their opinion on what democracy has been and its contributory success to our development. You take a look at the Africa Barometer report, or the Afrobarometer report, which is now pointing out that there's a 29-point decline when it comes to the trust and confidence and the belief in democratic principles. It's never been the same since 2017 for a country like Ghana. Experts say that's a threat, and we ought to watch that trajectory.
Yeah. And I agree. It's something to watch very carefully. I mean, when I talked about democracy being under threat and authoritarianism rising around the world, the key question is why also. And that has a lot to do with the aspirations of citizens. Yes, they want to be able to express their views freely, to decide who's in power, and to enjoy the rights that come with freedom, whether it is to publish, to associate, to express their religious beliefs. So that freedom is highly valued. But citizens also want security. They want to feel safe. Citizens also want to see their lives better and the opportunities for their children improving. So it's about growth, it's about jobs. And the challenges for democracies have been that in many countries, citizens have said, the people who I voted for haven't given me what my aspirations were. Okay. And that is for an individual country, but that's a fundamental question and for democracy in terms of, is it working or not? And I think that's where, when you look at the situation of Ghana in particular, yes, it is about maintaining a focus on democratic values, modernizing institutions, constitutions, laws, so that democracy is functioning well. But then, first and foremost, in Ghana and other countries, it's about the people who've been put into office delivering on their on the aspirations and what they said they would be doing. And so that's actually where, having just arrived in Ghana, a few months after an election and a new government have come in, that's where all the conversations have been in terms of where to go, what does that mean in practice, what have we said we will do, and how we're going to go about it.
I know you're a diplomat, but I don't know if you would want to dare to be a bit blunt about this, because you're not new to the continent. You've been in Ghana, you've been to Ethiopia, I believe, which is part of your tour of duty as well. How do we safeguard democracy now? Some say there's a ripple effect from what's happening in the sub-region. Constitutional changes in government, a reason for which we're seeing what we're saying, and it could have a spillover effect on countries such as Ghana. So how do we safeguard our democracy then?
Yeah, so I think one key element I've talked about, which is safeguarding democracy in terms of actually the institutions, the constitution, etc., being in line with people's aspirations and being functioning well. And also what I said, that it's about citizens' expectations being met. It's about governments delivering what they said they would do, and also what people are hoping for or voting for. But then also, because you make the connection to and comparison to other countries in the region, it is about actively dealing with the threats. And when you look at what has been happening in the sub-region, when you look at the fact that when I was here before, Burkina Faso was a very peaceful country. And I remember people going on road trips through Burkina Faso to go to Mali and so on. Now, when you look at the statistics, Burkina Faso is the country that had the most terrorist attacks in the world last year. So that is a fundamental change, and that's just on Ghana's northern border. So it is about understanding those dynamics in neighboring countries, working towards essentially preventing those dynamics affecting Ghana, and also then essentially being really, really clear on what does it mean to manage those threats. It's about partnerships with key people who have advice and expertise, but also a lot of it is politics in terms of working with neighboring countries, with institutions that can help in that space.
The signs were on the wall, and Ghana, of course, took the leadership role in, launching the Accra initiative. I recall at the time some UK officials joining the international community to support the Accra initiative. In fact, at the launch, we had your predecessor and Minister for Defense at the time visiting Accra, just to be a part of the effort towards supporting the peace process. Yet, as we speak today, the sub-region has the highest number of military overthrows. And it's bringing into question the effectiveness or otherwise of the Accra initiative. President John Dramani Mahama is hinting of creating a new platform that will accommodate the likes of Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. Is the way forward a reformed Accra initiative, or you'd want us to stick?
Yeah. So I think the first thing to mention is that Ghana showed real leadership and willingness to resolve the issues at the sub-regional level under the previous administration, and is doing so again under the current administration under President Mahama. And I think that is really important, because the leadership, the coordination has to come from within the region. And Ghana is in a strong position to play its part in that space. Actually, when I presented my credentials to the president a few weeks ago, we were talking precisely about that and the possible direction. And I think he was describing quite powerfully that the threats that the neighboring countries face are shared threats that could also be facing Ghana. So Ghana, because of its history, its institutions, its standing within the region, but then also because of its own protect Ghana, has a key role to play here. I think the role of the UK, as you say, is very much a supporting role. We were supportive of the Accra initiative, and we're in consultation with government in terms of the future direction and where we can support. But it's clear from the way you describe it that it is about engaging with the countries, the neighboring countries. It's also about bringing in some other countries in the sub-region. It's not just about Ghana and the AES. The coastal states play really. Nigeria plays an important role, and of course, I think we would not just be offering to support bilaterally, but also whether it's through ECOWAS or the African Union. I think the leadership and facilitation, convening power that exists there can also play a really critical role.
And just for the purposes of reassurances, will the UK stand shoulder to shoulder the people of Ghana in weathering the storm? Because the threats are ever increasing.
Yeah, I think we have a commitment stance. When you look at the commitments being expressed, not just by myself here in Ghana, but globally, the UK published a defense review, a security review earlier this year. And when you look at the focus countries that we want to work with most closely in Africa, there are only 3 or 4 from a security, from a military perspective, and Ghana is one of them. So it's definitely a priority, and it's a commitment that stands.
Geopolitics. We need to obviously watch what's happening around the world. I don't believe the UK is an island. It is literally, but of course, in the international community, you can't walk alone, is it? Same for a country such as Ghana. And already you've disclosed through your new article that you are already holding conversations with President John Dramani Mahama ever since the start of your tour of duty. You've been discussing issues happening around the world, geopolitics, especially in the sphere of trade. Many countries now opting for isolation. And yet the reverse is the case when you look at it from the perspective of bilateral trades between the UK and Ghana, trade topping off at 1.9 billion pounds, I believe. Looking at all of these figures, how do you hope to keep Ghana in the pack of countries that believe in a rule-based order and the fact that that's the only way to get shared prosperity? Yeah.
So actually, we did discuss it. It did come up in the conversation with His Excellency. I think the picture is quite striking as you described it, which is many countries focusing more bilaterally, many countries questioning the international rules of the game. But the UK is not one of those countries. The UK is an open economy, has been for a very long time, an economy that believes in free trade and an economy that actually thrives on trading in goods, in services, and also in ideas and innovation. So when I spoke with His Excellency the President, he talked about, the word he used was, many countries are becoming transactional. And I think that has been something that we've also been observing. To some extent, there will always be bilateral deals to be done, and they're very tangible, and it's important to advance them. But at the same time, I think both Ghana and the UK have been advocating for the system that we all work in, the rules-based international order, to remain strong and open, and trade is definitely one of the areas. So I think we can do both, working together, Ghana and the UK, at the global level, on trade, yes, but also on other issues. So for example, just a couple of days ago, in the UN Human Rights Council, Ghana and the UK voted together on a resolution to point the spotlight on Sudan. So there are many areas where the international order is playing an important role and that we want to protect it, while at the same time advancing the bilateral relations and in trade that is about the number that you mentioned to increase.
1.9, yes, billion,
exactly.
Yes, moving that up, shoring that up. But whatever the case, the aim is to expand it.
Yeah, and it hasn't been expanding actually, so there's work to do to improve it.
You used to, in the line of your career, manage, I believe, the largest intervention in terms of development aid to parts of Africa, if not Ghana, at least in Ethiopia. You were running that at some point. But now you're saying that the UK, and just like Ghana, ought to move from the traditional partnership of aid and much more into the areas of trade.
Yeah.
Is there clarity to that, or
Yeah.
would you still want people to keep asking you the question? Are you shifting? Are you shifting? That long-held stance of the UK of supporting African countries such as Ghana.
Yeah. So there's a lot in that question.
Yes.
Let me try to unpack it. Right. And so this is where it's relevant when I was in Accra before.
Yes.
At the time, development assistance aid was for many countries almost dominating the bilateral relationship because it was of such magnitude. And when you look at what happened over the last 2 decades, that has really changed. And that's for a number of reasons. One of them is the progress that Ghana has made, which I described, and that's just not just economic, but also in terms of some of the key things that people focused on, which is the poverty levels, the child mortality rates, the girls' education rates. So when you look at the trajectory, Ghana has made significant progress over the decades. But it's also about what Ghana has asked of its international partners. Quite a few years ago, the coin was phrased, the term was phrased, Ghana beyond aid, yes. Right? More recently, when you look at the language that His Excellency President Mahama is using is sovereignty. And when you look at the example of the health summit that he convened, which was about health sovereignty. So I think that spirit of progress combined with a clear steer from the Ghanaian side to change things has been driving this. And also from the UK side, we see that there's so many opportunities where ultimately it's about partnership in the sense that the institutions in Ghana and the institutions in the UK that are doing similar things and that can benefit from working together, learning from each other, and sharing expertise that have much less to do with financial transfers. It's much more about knowledge and networking. And I can give a few examples of that.
I was just going to ask you about typifying what you're saying, because you'll say, well, it's just in the books. We don't see that practically happening. Yeah. How are you making that happen here in Ghana? Yeah.
So let me just give you a few examples that are very live in terms of how I've spent my last few weeks. About 10 days ago, there was a large conference that happened here in Accra, which was convened by the Bank of Ghana and the Bank of England. And it's one of the elements of a partnership that started 7 years ago. That has meant the policymakers in the UK, policymakers in Ghana have been working together. That's about quite technical exchanges about monetary policy and so on. But when you look at what happened 10 days ago, it was actually that partnership became the convening platform for central bankers, governors and deputy governors from all across Africa to come here to work together. Yeah. So you can see that that's very much between central banks. Yeah. A few days before, the Ghana Revenue Authority launched 2 new initiatives also here in Accra. Yeah. One of them focusing on taxpayer awareness, and the other one focusing on raising the rate at which informal traders are paying taxes. Yeah. And a key part of that effort is behind the scenes a partnership between the UK Revenue Authority, His Majesty's Revenue and Custom, and the Ghana Revenue Authority. Again, that has to do with staff exchanges, with shared training program, with sharing expertise. So you see that when you look at government institutions, but also clearly when you look at universities working together, you see that when it comes to the science and technology institutions in our countries convening together and projects being conducted jointly. So there's a lot that's about government, but there's also a lot about just supporting the institutions in our country that have nothing to do with government to nurture those relationships.
And in the area of infrastructure, you're working on some projects as well.
Yeah,
I believe the KGTR market is a perfect example as well.
Yeah. So infrastructure is a critical element of the bilateral relationship, and it's because of what it achieves in terms of growth, in terms of trade, in terms of investment, in terms of job creation. So we've been looking very carefully at what more we can do. There are quite a number of projects that have been completed. I was in Kumasi recently. I was in Tamale last week. I was struck arriving at both of those airports. They were supported and built with UK financing behind it from the UK Export Financing Facility. But airports is just maybe one of the most visible elements. You mentioned the central market in Kumasi, which has several phases. The initial work has been completed, and the discussions are now about the subsequent phases. It's about roads, but also it's about some of the infrastructure that links to what we've been working on. For example, health and the Kofi Anoche teaching hospital is one example as well.
I was asking about the market because many are asking about the phase 2.
Yes.
And when that will be happening and if it will be enjoying the support of the UK.
Yeah. So actually what happened was that the financing and the project had been agreed, but when Ghana defaulted on its debt in late 2022, all those arrangements were paused. And one of the key things that were achieved during the time that I've been here a few weeks ago was a bilateral agreement to restructure the debt of those projects in terms of looking at what the financing situation was, which projects the government wants to continue, what does that mean for the debt, the borrowing linked to each project. That was signed bilaterally between the two countries here by the Minister of Finance. And now it's being worked through in terms of moving ahead with all the projects. The government has been very clear, Kumasi Central Market is a priority. It's a priority for us. Yeah. So that effort on the next phase is being worked on. And I don't have concrete timelines, but I hope that can be announced soon.
We are hopeful.
Yeah.
People-to-people ties has been at the heart of Ghana-UK relations. The UK being welcoming to lots of Ghanaian diaspora.
Yeah.
But now, due to the migration crisis, so many questions emerging, especially when it comes to students who want to study in the UK, who want to live and experience what's in the UK for them. Days ago, weeks before your arrival, was that of Sadiq Khan, who was, waging that campaign, touching with the likes of Accra, Lagos, and some other cities around the world, just to, further consolidate that. He's asking the UK government to be more welcoming and open to global students. Well, I'll be biased to say Ghanaian students entering the UK. Is the UK that open now?
I think so. And you mentioned the visit by the Mayor of London. Yes. So when he was here, he launched the London to Accra campaign. It's an idea of connecting our capital cities. Right. It has to do with the diaspora links that you mentioned, but also many of the linkages have a lot to do with trade and investment. So it goes beyond just people to people. It has concrete benefits in terms of Ghana's economy. But you also touched on education, and I was struck I'm struck again now arriving 3 months ago, just how many people have studied in the UK, have children who are studying in the UK, are going to universities in Ghana that have linkages with the UK, or UK university campuses here in the UK. So education is a top priority, and that's why long-standing initiatives like the Chevening Scholars, the Commonwealth Scholars, they're all still very active and focusing on Ghana. There are questions around the migration policy and so on. But while some things have changed in the UK in terms of for example, the visas for dependents while studying in the UK, the overall policy and principle hasn't changed, which is a vibrant education sector where we're excited to see Ghanaian students interested in coming to the UK, and where the visa system and the immigration arrangements around it are open to facilitate that.
How many interested in finding a bit more about the visa processes, and there's a campaign that you're working on together with some other Commonwealth member countries, I believe. I will touch on that shortly, but one burning issue has got to do with students studying in the UK, particularly those being subvented by the government. The PhD cohort out this month and appealing to the government of Ghana and the United Kingdom to support them, because basically some of them are facing deportation. Is that something that you're likely to with the government of Ghana, just to give some amnesty of sort to these people?
No, it's a very live issue, as you're saying, and I know that for the students who are in that situation, it creates a lot of uncertainty and also a lot of worry in terms of continuing their studies and what this means for them personally. So it is something we're working on. We resolve, given everything that I said about the importance we attach to the UK being an exciting and open place to study. So we're working with the universities, we're working with the authorities here in Ghana, the scholarship secretariat in particular, to find a solution to that. I mean, it's worthwhile pointing out, because we touched on immigration, that ultimately what's at the heart of this is not immigration or a change in policy or anything like that. It's very much a financial issue. It's about the funding of those programs and those students in the UK. But I'm glad you raised a spotlight on it, because it is a critical issue. It's a life one for us as well.
Something that you're likely to work out?
That we're hopeful to work, that we're focused on, yes.
But speaking of the visa process itself, I'm just learning from that joint statement released by Canada, the UK, and Australia. I believe I'm correct on that.
On visa fraud.
Yeah, visa fraud. Rising as high as 18%, I believe. Is that the sole reason why perhaps many people are not getting the opportunity to go to these countries?
Yeah. So it was something that I was curious to learn more about when I arrived here. So I looked at the numbers for last year and where we're at this year. And actually the number of being granted to Ghanaians to come to the UK is higher this year than it was last year. So it's increasing. And then I also looked at the percentage of visa applications that are approved, and the majority are approved. So there's quite a lot of, I think, misinformation out there as well. So the visa numbers are going up, and the approval rates are the majority, not a small number. But it is also true what you're saying, that there's some problematic cases. And with sometimes people make mistakes, sometimes people are a bit cavalier also in terms of how they fill in their forms. And it's just in this day and age, you can't be cavalier with applying for visas. Just a footnote, when I prepared for coming to Accra, I spent a lot of time personally filling in the visa application form that I obtained from the Ghana High Commission in London, providing all the information, making sure it's delivered to them. So it is really important to do that, ideally personally and with the time and documents needed, because that will help a lot. But it's not an easy process, and applying for a visa to the UK has quite a lot of steps in it as well. So there are people who say, we can do this for you, we can make it easy, it costs you little, it's faster. And there are quite a few agents who are not honest in what they do. And so this campaign very much shines a spotlight there to say, sort of, if this looks too good to be true, it probably is. Just to be aware of the consequences. If you think that this will help ultimately, it could really backfire, because the consequences of a visa ban for 10 years is really not what many people were thinking about when they thought this is a quicker way of doing this. So the campaign shines a spotlight there with other countries.
But now you've launched this campaign. At the end of the exercise, what do you jointly hope to achieve?
Well, we hope that there's a lot more awareness of actually what is the right way of applying for a visa to the UK. Where do you go? And for channels that are different, for people really to ask questions whether they want to do this, whether they should do this, or whether actually they're taking a risk here that's not worth taking. And so we want to raise awareness, point people towards the right way of doing this, and at the end of the day, putting illegal agents out of business.
Possibly the reason why some Ghanaians may want to leave the country is because of the opportunity and jobs, and especially for the youth. I'm taking a look at the demographics, and it's scary. By 2050, 1 in 3 of the world's youth population will be found in Africa. Youth bulge it is. The need and the cry for more job opportunities for the youth will certainly come up. How do you hope that African governments would open up, partner more international agencies to create more jobs for the teeming youth?
I think that's one of the big questions we're facing when you think about, in a way, our generations of policymakers, diplomats, and so on. Because for a long time there was the sense that the demographic dividend, as it's also called, will come, and it's a fantastic opportunity of having so many young people and the energy and productivity that can bring. But now there's also quite a bit of nervousness, and it's linked to what we talked about earlier, which is people have expectations and aspirations. If you have finished your secondary school, you've gone to university, and you find it hard to get a job, that means there's a lot of potential, but then also there's a restlessness. And when you look at some of the challenges to democracy, it's often coming also from young people who feel that their aspirations can't be fulfilled because they're not finding jobs, they're not able to earn incomes to start families and so on. So I think the opportunities are huge, but it has to do with ensuring that those opportunities can be seized. And in this case, it is linked to a lot of things we talked about. Removing any barriers to trade and investment, because ultimately it is companies, it's the private sector that will create most of the jobs. And therefore it's about attracting investment to Ghana to create those jobs. It's about supporting Ghanaian companies to export to the UK and elsewhere. That will allow companies to grow. It's also about the innovation that can make a small startup a big company and create lots of jobs. And so it's about what I mentioned earlier about sharing expertise, the think tanks and innovation hubs and so on, for them to work together to foster innovation, so that what could be a startup that doesn't go anywhere actually reaches scale. But a lot of it also is about the skills that people have, young people coming into the workforce or wanting to start their own company. So this is about leadership skills and what people sometimes refer to as the softer skills. And just a few weeks ago here, we had a fantastic event, which was the Youth Leadership Summit, which just showed just how much talent there is, but also the opportunities to build on that leadership that young people have, and to nurture and to develop it for all the areas that I touched on earlier.
And speaking of that event, I believe you had the opportunity to interact with some of Ghana's finest young brains. What do you sense is their desire, their need now in terms of expectation, in terms of policy and probably innovation, if I should put it that?
So I have to make a confession, which is, at that time I hadn't presented my credentials to the president, so I was not able to participate in the way I would have wanted. I was here, but wasn't
watching from afar.
I couldn't be on the stage. I couldn't be engaging as the British government's representative. But it featured, that type of dialogue and conversation featured really prominently in the engagements that I've had otherwise already. And I see it in the office, actually, in the British High Commission every day. And Ghana has some fantastic arrangements in place. The National Service Scheme is brilliant, and the National Service students, I'm not sure how you call the people.
NSS personnel.
NSS personnel. We've just had a changeover in the High Commission, because it finishes after a year, and it's just brilliant, both the last intake and the new one. But also, we have many other ways of engaging with young people. For example, we have a program called Ambassador for a Day, which brings together a couple of ambassadors, a couple of CEOs, all to
a shadow ambassador.
A female student.
Oh, okay.
Finishing secondary or in tertiary education, And so we've had a couple of engagements in that space. And it's just brilliant when you see with people, no matter which part of the country they come from, how they see opportunities where they are, or how they see sometimes opportunities to go global with a small idea where they have a lot of ambition. And it's very inspirational.
I hope no one walks up to you to see your job next.
No, we joked about that as well.
Yeah.
The ambassador for a day could become ambassador for a while.
Definitely. We need to go, but by divine, I don't know, it appears this year is the year of second chance for many, right? President John Dramani Mahama coming back for the second time. You're also returning to Ghana, yes. I believe, for the second time. What does that mean to you as you know, as a diplomat, and also where do you see all of this ending for you at the end of your tour of duty here in Ghana?
Yeah. So this point about a second time, and in my case, returning to Ghana, is very special because it's the first time actually that I am returning to a place where I lived before, and it was something I really wanted to do. And when I had the opportunity to apply to become British High Commissioner, because unlike the president, I didn't get elected. I had to, I had to compete for the job. It was a fantastic, but also it means that I arrive with a lot more knowledge and understanding and sort of readiness to go. And therefore, I'm also quite focused, as you were saying, in terms of what do I want to achieve, what do I want to see as the legacy. And it's early days, but my thinking at the moment is that there are two areas that we've identified in the conversations we've had as being our top priorities. One is on growth, investment, trade, job creation. The second one is on security in all its facets, and we talked quite a bit in our conversation about those. Many of them are government to government in terms of what we're doing. But there's a third one, which is about not only focusing on the UK and Ghana, working in Ghana, but the regional and the global dimensions, whether that is in the sub-region, whether that's, I mentioned votes in the UN, or whether that's in terms of some of the international architecture that both of our countries want to protect and defend. So it's also working together internationally. And then the fourth and last area that I want to highlight is precisely the point about people-to-people linkages. We've spoken a bit about education, which is really important for us, but also I've been really struck when it comes to the cultural space, whether that's the connections we have on music, the connections we have on other performing arts, you go to sports, etc. So I really want to make sure that the many connections between our countries are fostered, and that we take those to the next level as well.
We can't go without talking about the royal visits. Yes. Your impression of it?
Yeah, so we had a visit by His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh, during the last couple of days. And first of all, it's worthwhile noting that he's been here several times. So you could see that the connections are very strong, not just between the UK and Ghana, but also with the royal family. And it was a visit very much focused on the cultural elements of our relationship. There was a lot of vibrancy, a lot of focus on issues that are important to His Royal Highness. At Aburi Gardens, on conservation, in a nearby school, on young people, but also looking at some of the important moments in history, and paying respects at the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial is an example. But then also looking at the dynamics and the leadership today. There was a beautiful event at Jubilee House, at Durban, with traditional leaders, which was very touching and showed the connections that the royal family also leaders in Ghana, and then of course spending time with His Excellency the President. But beyond that, there were elements that we touched on earlier in our interview, which had to do with innovation, university partnerships, education, and there was also then an opportunity, and it was a real honor for our annual flagship event, the King's birthday party, to have His Royal Highness participate in that. So that's how the visit ended, on a high, with a party when everybody got together, from friends and family from the UK.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you, Dr. Christian Rogg. Thank you for speaking to Joy.
Thank you, Blessed.
We'll see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And that's all we have for you in this package of UpFront here on the Joy News channel. Until then, log on to myjoyonline.com. You can watch a playback of that conversation with Dr. Christian Rogg on all of our social media handles. It's at Joy News on TV. I'm Blessed Sogah. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.